Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Tweety's Circus, and with me today, joining me at the circus is my good friend S.C. McPeter. Say hi.
Hello.
A few bits of info to get underway. So as mentioned, this is a review for Tweety's Circus, released on the 4th of June 1955. It's the 741st in the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Collector's Vault Volume 1 Blu-ray set. When we recorded this track, this set wasn't even announced, so that's how far ahead I can get with some of these tracks. In fact, it's not even out when I'm actually editing this review, but it will be out, it'll feature this short, and that's what counts. But in case you haven't seen this one, it is under copyright, can't show you the full thing here on YouTube. Warner Brothers may choose to put it on their own channel, and they should, because this one's fairly safe. But what happens in this one? It's your usual Sylvester and Tweety short, although it's got more of a focus on Sylvester, I would argue, where not only is he after Tweety, but he also has to get away from this line that he pokes fun of at the very beginning of this short. So, not much by way of story, but for what it is, completely fine.
This was, I think, the first Tweety production after the shutdown. And you kind of get the impression that they were starting to lose interest a little bit in making these. They made so many, and they started focusing on Sylvester himself. That's sort of why the better Sylvester cartoons are the ones without his famous co-stars in a way, where that felt more appropriate.
And there's really not much by way of trivia for this one, aside from the fact that this is your first post-shutdown Sylvester and Tweety short. And if you've been watching these reviews, you'll notice that this one feels a little different, and there's a few reasons for it. And the major one here, as you mentioned to me before, is that there's no Virgil Ross, but you also have Ted Bonnickson. And the animation just feels different in this one, doesn't it?
Virgil Ross, according to Holly Pratt, he was the only animator that really used his character layouts verbatim. And I think that's why his scenes tend to be the cutest and the most appealing drawn in that style, because, well, Pratt was also really great at cuteness on his own, but without Virgil, there really wasn't anyone quite doing that in this, and it doesn't really have that subtlety that he could bring in the cartoons. And Ted Bonnickson, he was a serviceable animator later on, but here he was still just fitting into that role, and he was really, really stiff and straightforward in his animation, and Freleng himself, I get the impression he did not like what he was seeing and couldn't wait to move him aside as soon as he could, and that's what happened. He moves to McKimson Jr. almost as soon as McKimson gets his job back.
Yeah, so you'll notice a name that wouldn't stay very long at the Freleng unit, but Virgil Ross, I will say, is definitely missed, because you've got the wall that takes Bart Davis in these shorts, but you sort of need someone like Virgil Ross to sort of ground things down a little bit, I think, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But that's not to say it's bad. There's some really great stuff in here. Some of it's really weird, but in a really funny sort of way, and I think it's very interesting, actually, to see some of this stuff, but I like it.
We also get the return of Jerry Chinicky. I get the impression from what I've read that he was running his own business for quite some years in between when he was last here. I think it may have been camera work, but I don't necessarily remember what he was doing, but he's back after the shutdown.
Yep, and he's already done a few shorts that have been released post-shutdown, but yeah, he's definitely a name that hasn't been around for a few years, and now he's back. But with this short, confession time, I had not seen this one before. This is the first time I've ever seen it, and I was, again, pleasantly surprised. We're recording this review in the same session as Sandy Claus, so it's kind of interesting doing one pre-shutdown Tweety short and one post-shutdown, both in the same recording session, and both of which I had seen Sandy Claus once prior, so it was kind of like new to me anyway, watching it again to be reviewed. But here I'd not seen Tweety Circus, and it's so interesting to compare the two Tweetys from the two different eras. But thankfully, this one's funny. Is it a great Sylvester and Tweety short? Maybe not, but I laughed at it. I love some of the designs in this one. But yeah, I think this one's a pretty good one. But I don't think this one will be a go-to short down the track, but at least it's one of those shorts where if it's on, it's like, okay, I'll watch it. It's fine for what it is. Unlike a Buddy short, where I'll change it straight away, unless it's Buddy's Bearcats, of course. I mean, that's a different story. I reckon we go through this short from start to finish and go through why this might be a highlight for some, maybe not for others, why it's perhaps middle of the road. But we can start off with the title cards, and I just love how it's got a very circus feel to it. So this short is composed by Mil Franklin, who used less and less of the musical puns like Carl Starling did, right? So that music in the beginning, that's all original composition as I understand it, but it sounds very circusy. However, we end up going into one of the best renditions of Meow, which is an actual song. You've heard it many times, usually associated with cats. My mistake. I mean, haha, right? And it's sung by Mel Blanc. In A Gruesome Twosome, he did this really weird meowing version over there opposite Sarah Burner, but here he's actually singing the lyrics of Sylvester.
All the pussycats have got a song. Meow, meow. You can hear the song the whole night long. Meow, meow.
Say what we want about this short. I love this opening.
Yeah, I really love this nice opening too. Really nicely drawn, really nicely acted. It's got a nice design having him on the fence, and he notices the circus.
And he's more of a cat in this opening shot. Like, he's on all fours. Like, he's acting like an actual cat and not walking on two legs like he does in the rest of the short, which I thought was interesting.
You can hear the song the whole night long. Meow, meow.
Cast his cartoons in a way where they would only need 3 animators for them, or maybe sometimes 4. I think it was usually 3, though, during the latter half of the 50s. But you'll notice that it cuts from one animator to another. Second scene of Sylvester is Art Davis, and he almost gives Sylvester a beer belly in the way that he draws him. He really goes loose and just doing this subdued dialogue, even when it's still full acting, but it's just drawn very loosely.
Boy, pink lemonade, cotton candy, peanuts. Well, I must be early. No one's here yet.
I just like how some animators seem to think that Sylvester's like a middle-aged sort of cat character. I just like that idea behind it. I mean, McKimson goes further with that when he teams up with his son, Sylvester Jr., but yeah, they definitely do it here sometimes with the Freeling shorts as well. But I love that opening. Fantastic. So let me know in the comments if you think Mel Blanc's traditional Meow is better in this one or in A Gruesome Twosome. Definitely let me know. I'd be curious to see what people think about that one, because they're both great. But man, these backgrounds, I love the backgrounds of this circus once Sylvester notices where he is. We see Krinko the Great and Bongo the Fierce. And if you look at this particular background, I love that added touch at the bottom. You got the stylized cat shadow. Just a nice little touch. Most people may not notice it, but it's there and it looks really good.
Yeah, very nicely stylized. It's just mostly flat, but it certainly is stylized. And I love Sylvester's excitement among that stiff animation of him walking towards the tents, and conveniently, no one's here yet.
No, that's right. Like, what's a good way to set our short in a circus without animating much? I know. Let's do it before they're open for the day. Because why not? I like how excited he is. He's like a little child in a way. It's like, oh boy, pink lemonade, cotton candy. He's just so excited. And we see in the background Flamo the Fire Eater and Catman. So obviously, yeah, he's just great backgrounds here. Great backgrounds. He approaches Lion, King of the Cats, and I love this lion design. In fact, they would reuse this lion design in Roman Legion here, a short I can't wait to get to. I like that one quite a bit, actually. But it's the same lion. I wonder who designed this lion.
I would assume Holly Pratt. Maybe he based it a little bit off a suggestion from Freeling, but most of the Freeling suggestions I've seen, even this late on, tend to have a very retrograde look. They look like they're from harmonizing cartoons in a way, but I would assume that all the design was down to Holly Pratt in a way, even with Freeling setting what he kind of wanted in a way.
I think it's great. I just love this design.
Lion, king of the cats. King of the cats, eh? Well, you're not my king.
The animation as well of the lion is really good, how perplexed he is. So you got the animation of Sylvester taunting this lion, being all brave, because of course the lion's behind a cage. So of course you can act all brave, right? He ends up taunting this lion and the lion ends up roaring. Great animation again, I know I mentioned that already.
You want to be king, eh? Okay, king, I'm crowning you.
But then you got the added touch of Sylvester hissing like an actual cat as well. Just the way he just transforms into a real cat for a moment. So scene. Does it go on for a bit too long? Maybe, but I don't know. I like the added touches in this one. It sets everything up nicely. And of course he gets hit in the head with a shovel, because why not?
Yeah.
Fake bravery. Gotta love that.
Yeah.
But we get some time wasting here where he walks past a few animals describing what they are. Probably don't really need much of that. And he eventually sees Tweety, who is an attraction for some reason.
There's that very strange layout where it looks like he's almost in a dome Tweety and there's the small Sylvester head.
Yes, so bizarre. But, oh, we got to set it up that Tweety's there for, reasons.
It's almost like it's a camera of Tweety size, but we get that really nice animation of Art Davis outside of the cage when we first see Tweety.
Yeah, it's a nice one.
And we get that nice Jerry Chinicky scene where Sylvester with a hammer.
Yes, I like how we get this wonderful layout where they got the usual tour scene, which I believe audiences expected at the time. I think they had to put that in there for that reason. But then Sylvester chases after Tweety, but then he ends up bumping into the lion somehow. I wonder how he got inside the cage. I don't know, but whatever.
Whenever I saw these as a kid, I always thought that those cages were, the bars were light enough where you could really do that. Of course, that's not how cages are actually, but conveniently, he's able to do it here. And I do like the circus backdrop. They do a good enough job making you really think that this is a nice circus, especially with those bright blues. Of course, he hammers it in.
Yep. And I just love Sylvester's face where he keeps on trying to hit the lion and he realizes his attempts are futile. It's like, no, this is not going to work.
Yep, Stan Laurel face.
Yep, and a lion knocks him to the ground. Because why not? Boy, so it's a nice little opening there, but we get this great layout. This is one of the best shots in this, and it's a great setup for a gag. And I think, regardless of your thoughts of this short, I think this is a great little thing to do.
Yeah, this gag is very well set up. The reveal is perfect.
Yep. So Sylvester sees Tweety again. Tweety ends up going into a water hose, or so we think. It's an elephant trunk, and I love that shot of the elephant just being angry. That whole thing with size, showing how small Sylvester is in comparison. It's a great shot.
Yeah.
I mean, look, to be fair, you'd be angry too if your trunk was hit like it was in that previous shot by Sylvester.
Probably that elephant that we saw earlier that he just pronounced.
Yep, I think so. And Sylvester's thrown into the lion's cage and he acts like a lion tamer, and then off screen the lion gets the whip and whips Sylvester. The way this shot is done, I'm wondering if they were like, you know what, it's easier to animate Sylvester being whipped than it is having a lion hold a whip and whipping. I don't know. They might have made that choice.
It's great Art Davis animation. He still draws it funny.
Yeah. Now we get the topper of this, which I like. So Sylvester ends up leaving the cage, and he eggs on the lion because, again, fake bravery. Now we've got the cage, but the lion ends up swiping Sylvester, and that body falling apart bit in time to the music, man, that killed me. Just Sylvester's face.
That's still Art Davis. He really does own the best scenes in this cartoon and quite a few others from this early period when the studio reopened. Because he was probably the oldest working animator at that studio still to this point, because he goes back to the 1920s in terms of his animation.
And I have noticed that Freeling has used that similar gag quite a few times where it'd be a character getting swiped or scratched, whatever, they just fall apart like this. Hey, if it works, why not? You can use it again, but at least we see it in a different way. But we get to see Tweety again, because again, the focus seems to be all over the place in this one. It's not your standard Sylvester and Tweety, it's just part of it. So you got these few stories going on at the same time. So now, Sylvester and Tweety head up to the high diving platform. Tweety dives, even though he could just fly away, I guess. Because Tweety can only fly when he can remember, I guess.
Tweety can only fly when the story's convenient enough.
Exactly. And Sylvester dives in, but we get the topper from before where it's like, oh yeah, we can just have the elephant just drink this water. He goes, you're very thirsty, you know?
Oh, you must be awfully thirsty, Mr. Elephant. I give you a drink of water. That a good, Elephant. Drink it all down.
Audio mixing here sounds really, really nice. I almost wonder if they had the original recording and the music session for this one, because it sounds really modern in a way.
And I like how Sylvester looks deformed, but then the next chase starts, but Sylvester's still deformed looking. Like he didn't get fixed up in the next shot, so it's a nice little touch, I think.
And it fixes himself in. I do like the fact they go back to this lion pretty quickly every now and then. It saves the cartoon from being like a Tom and Jerry or Terry Toon where it's just gags based around just one little thing.
Yeah.
There's just that character, of course, the wise guy line now wants him to prove that he's a fire eater.
Yeah, so now we see Tweety opening up the lion's cage, and Lion is now on the loose. So we get an advance on the gag. So before it's all to do with the cage, now the cage is open. And yeah, as you say, Sylvester disguises himself as Flamo. And that pose of the lion looking all skeptical, that killed me. Just that one little thing of him just going, yeah, I don't think you're this character. Prove it kind of look. He's just looking so quizzical.
He knows the whole time it's Sylvester.
It's just so good the way that pose is. It's just one drawing, and yet it just tells you everything you need to know. It is fantastic.
I don't know if it's Chiniki or Bonnickson quite doing this, but I'm going to go on a whim and say that it's Chiniki. And it's nice enough. The expressions are good. Again, I just feel like it's at a disadvantage because Art Davis is just all over the place in this cartoon, doing great. But man, this is good animation here of Sylvester on fire and going into the water. And then, of course, he uses that to hide from the lion.
Exactly.
Nope.
The whole thing with Sylvester realizing, oh crap, I've got to prove to the lion I can eat flame. And you can see the initial surprise on his face going, huh, I actually did swallow this fire. Hey, good for me. And the lion's like, oh, okay. He just walks off just cause. And then Sylvester realizes, oh, he's actually on fire. And yeah, it goes into the big tub, as you mentioned before. And as set up before, the elephant once again takes a drink.
I love when Sylvester takes his dive in. That drawing of him first holding himself in, it really does look like something from one of Davis's own cartoons in the 40s. I think this really is the last time you see this in any sort of theatrical Art Davis's animation like this. It's so later than I would ever expect it. And then it looks like he animated the whole scene of that lion just looking around before and the scene of the elephant moving in. He's drawing all the details, and that sort of goes back to his New York days when he assisted Dick Huber, who was pushing facial expressions and giving the realistic eyes on them.
Oh, by the way, who actually refilled that tub?
Maybe Tweety does some work around the circus.
Maybe. But we're not going to overthink that as we get to the high wire bits where, again, Tweety seems to forget he's a bird. You know, that he can fly, but whatever. We'll move on from that. And I like how the whole bit just goes against the laws of physics. And yet, when you watch the short, you forget that. It's done that well.
It's done satisfyingly.
Exactly. Like, okay, with Tweety being on one end, the whole pole would have fallen down as it is in that shot. But yeah, again, you just go with it. And Sylvester is like, okay, what can I do here? And I guess he's teaching kids about physics, right? Because he puts these bricks, they somehow there. I don't know where he gets those bricks from.
I really do like the logic, and this might be my favorite bit in the whole cartoon.
So he ends up balancing the beam, and he ends up getting Tweety, but the lion is just there, looking all smug.
Yeah.
You just love that expression.
I love when Sylvester grabs Tweety. That drawing by Davis is so funny. Him just getting the whole lip, his evil eyes. He's drawing Sylvester with all these pointed teeth as well in this cartoon. I just can't get over Davis's animation of this period.
Again, this is not a perfect Sylvester and Tweety, sure, but man, there's so many great moments in it. And that lion, he's looking on, Sylvester puts Tweety down. But instead of doing it like maybe what Chuck Jones would do, because there's similar gags before where there'll be like a balancing gag and another character would just
hold his hair.
Yeah, like lifting the bricks one by one and so on. No, the lion just kicks it all off. That's it.
It's so blunt, but it works. It may not have necessarily the same smug character, but that works better in a Bugs Bunny cartoon than a Sylvester and Tweety.
Exactly.
Especially since the only thing you could really do is have Sylvester take off his fur coat.
Oh, look, Tweety can now fly, because the story calls for it, so Tweety can now fly. Or maybe he's just being a bit of a smartass anyway, and he could have flown away, but he just wants to taunt this putty cat. But anyway, I love that weird bit of animation and shortcuts as Sylvester falls down and ends up in the lion's mouth. It's just the way it's done is kind of weird.
And then I think it has some nice squash and stretch when he's moving inside the mouth, I'll say that. And then, of course, we get to the short just very quickly building itself towards an end.
In another great layout bit where Sylvester closes the cage and swallows the key, You know there's a punchline coming because of the way the setup is done, but I love this layout here. And,
Yeah.
well, that solves my lion problem, but we know what to expect.
I like that the cages in this look like giant bird cages.
Yeah, it's just, I don't care. Let's just draw cages. That's probably Freeling's thoughts on the
Yeah.
matter anyway. But I like how we do hear meow again in the score, but it's done in such a different way. It's just more, I guess, a little bit more sinister.
I think when Foster wrote this out initially, he probably had the joke as 50 lions, a tiger, and a putty cat, because there's a tiger in that layout, and there's no payoff for it, which is strange to me. I guess Freeling cut it because he thought it wasn't funny, but it went to layout.
Yeah, it sets up a very dark ending. This is one of the darkest Looney Tunes endings, in my opinion, where you've got Tweety being the carnival barker at the end. Again, we don't see any people, but whatever. I guess they're going to start opening up now. And you'd say it's in a great bit, you get to see 50 lions. I mean, this is one big circus, having 50 lions. But anyway, 50 lions and a putty cat. We hear a roar. Make that 50 lions. Sylvester is now dead. The end.
They finally got the mall that killed him. This short does end pretty vile. This cartoon, it's a bit more raw than some of the other Tweeties, maybe because it isn't sold with any cuteness.
It's such a weird one. Like, on the one hand, yeah, there's a lot of shortcuts in this one, and there's a lot of things that they did in this where that's just really weird, but I found myself enjoying this one. It's not top tier. I enjoyed Sandy Claus a little bit more out of the two we did today in the recording session, but this one's fun. If it's on, I'll watch it. And it's the first time I've seen it, and I was pleasantly surprised. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. That's my score.
I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It kind of just goes from gag to gag without much happening, but the line does kind of save this cartoon from being not enough.
Yeah, it's a great one. And a little hidden gem. I keep saying that, but this one, it really is. You know, because a lot of people seem to think that all the Sylvester Tweeties are the same, but there's enough variety, and this one gives you that bit of variety. So that's that. But that will do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
That's all, folks.
Hurry, hurry, hurry! Step right up, the greatest show on earth. 50 lions and a putty cat. Hurry, hurry, hurry! 50 lions.